This is Flowers on the Stage.
Here we are with Grammy-winning artist and producer, banjo player for the Infamous Stringdusters, and so much more. Chris Pandolfi. Chris, man, so glad to have you here. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Cam. Thanks for having me, man. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing great.
Good to
I'm
hear.
doing great. It's a new year, starting off fresh. So, hey, starting this off, I'd love to hear you talk about something about music itself. Not necessarily like being a professional musician, but just music itself that you believe now that you didn't believe when you were younger.
My experience with music, I feel like, has evolved in a similar way to probably a lot of people's, where, when you first start playing music, when you're drawn to music, it's this very pure thing. It doesn't really involve any career aspect. It doesn't involve, these elements of performing. It's just about inspiration. And, that's such a cool thing. Um, but eventually, when your career kicks in, I mean, I guess I can really only speak for myself, but I know that there are other people who've had this experience. You become more aware of what's going on, and in some cases, more aware of like the consequences of what are going on. So, you start to think more, and thoughts can be such a detriment to expression or many different things that we try to achieve in our lives. But my journey with music, has really sort of come full circle, and now I feel like I can express myself. And I don't say that I can express myself well or that I'm better than I was before. I just feel like I'm working to be in a zone where this is what I have to say, and this is how I'm going to say it, and I'm not going to judge myself night to night and be so critical. Um, I'm not going to make these qualitative decisions, or I should say qualitative sort of like analysis of how I did or how good I am. And that's such an easy thing to do. And we all feel some element of that. That's part of what drives us to be great at what we do. But ultimately, music is this moment. It's just a moment of expression. And it's not even really you. It's really you listening to all the different influences that have seeped in to your musical intuition over the years, and then sort of letting them speak in a cool and unique way, sort of coming through your personality, through your filter. So, you know, I feel like I'm so much more aware of that piece of music and grateful for it and tuned into it. I think it's something that happens really naturally when you're starting playing. You're just inspired. And it's so pure. Your connection to that thing is very one to one. And then many years go by, and you face all these different challenges in life and with music. And for me, things have evolved to where now I really look back to that same kind of energy that I felt when I was just getting started, and really try to be in that, and again, just embrace what I am and not worry about being anything other than that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I love that. Always that like first show wide-eyed energy, kind of never want to lose that.
Yeah, and you need to work sometimes to cultivate that thing that one time was just so natural, the most natural thing of all. That was all you knew about music, was that inspirational moment. It was just there for you to be in. Well, recreating that on stage is a whole other skill. And um so yeah, always in search of that moment. That's really one of the great joys of this career, I think.
Yeah, and that that definitely is a high skill, being able to create that on stage. But hey, so zooming out, now I'd love for you to kind of talk to me about something maybe about life in general, not necessarily music specifically, that you don't believe now that you did believe when you were younger.
you know I think, like a lot of people, when I was younger, I thought I was just invincible. And again, that's a very natural thing. And we're very focused on what we are doing when we're younger. It's a very natural time to do that. But now I know so much more clearly through a lot of work and awareness, and I'm a very curious person, and I love, especially through my podcast Inside the Musician's Brain, learning from other people about their experiences. But I know now that that's not a real thing, that thing of being invincible. I think running with that energy can be really empowering, but I realize now that we're all so connected, and it's not me and my arc through the world. It's me and all my different connections with all the different people and all the different energies and all the things that I'm interested in. It's not this sole endeavor. It's a much more collaborative process. And in that process, I, like everyone else, I believe, am vulnerable. And being vulnerable and opening yourself up to those other energies and those other people, that's a big part of that. So I feel like, just like everything, it's a work in progress. And who knows, maybe those beliefs will change and evolve as most do. But that's definitely one thing that I feel now and have realized, as I've gotten a little bit older, that, man, we're all connected. And what I'm doing is very predicated on what a lot of other people are doing. And the more aware and sensitive I can be, the more empathetic, just for me and my experience, again, I can only speak for myself, the better off I am, the more content I am. And that's something that I really try to cultivate as I get older.
What would you say is, or what do you think is the best piece of advice that you've followed in your life?
God, that's a big question, because I've been very lucky to get so much great advice from my mentors. And I do have a few mentors, and I think that is really such a gift, is being able to learn from people who have had those experiences. And one of my main mentors is Ron Block. He's the banjo player for Alison Krauss and Union Station, and he's a world-class banjo player, but he's also an incredibly deep thinker and an incredibly thoughtful guy. And we've spent many, many hours on the phone talking about music and talking about life. And he's one of the main reasons that, I've figured out in ways, but in other ways I'm still figuring out how to not give in to self-doubt, because self-doubt is there for all of us, and it's the most natural thing. And so much of what's out there in society cultivates this self-doubt, and some of it is even healthy, but it can really be a detriment to expression. And if we listen too much to some of the voices around us, or even the voices that are in our head, the thoughts, again, this thought world that we all live in so much, these thoughts about what happened in the past and what happened in the future, they're such an essential part of the human condition for everyone, but they're also not real. They're just thoughts. And, Ron and I have spoken at length about how self-doubt is one of those thoughts. And it's funny, because you think a lot more about yourself than other people do. And self-doubt is like your worries about other people's acceptance of you. But the reality is that they don't think about it that much, and they don't think about you as much as you think they do. And that's a daunting thing, or a weird thing to say, but it's very freeing, and I'm just me, and you're just you, and we're all just whatever we are. And the more that we can embrace that, the better off we'll be. I mean, we all have this very intrinsic form of expression that we're just born with that makes us unique. And these ideas of self-doubt, I'm not good enough at this thing, I need to be better. Well, on the one hand, they drive us, but at the same time, they really do ultimately, I think, inhibit expression. And so, I'm always trying to figure out ways to avoid that. But that's just some really great advice that I've gotten. And like a lot of advice, you need to hear it a lot of times, and you need to hear it from someone who you trust and believe in, and Ron certainly falls into that category. But like I said, I've been lucky to learn from, and I continue to learn from, a lot of great people who have a lot of wisdom in my life, and that's a very important thing.
This is Flowers on the Stage, a podcast about being creative and finding success. To support it, please check out our sponsors, New Belgium Brewing and Thrax CBD. And now, back to the episode.
What would you say is the best knowledge that you can share about being a great collaborator specifically?
Well, I often think about how humans have this real potential energy lingering around us at all times. And that is the energy that can be created, can be harnessed by lifting other people up, right? Like, how much do we actually do that? We're so concerned with what's going on right here. And oftentimes we're competitive, and I'm competitive too. And again, that's like, on the one hand, this essential part of what drives you, but at the same time, it can be a hindrance to expression, to connecting with other people. And we have this potential energy, right? It's just hanging there in the air. And I'm always thinking, wow, what if we just all could take one step outside of ourselves and do something to lift someone else up, a stranger, someone close to us. And as a collaborator, it's incredible how much energy you can create by lifting other people up musically, encouraging them, really getting behind them, not just saying it, but feeling that this is not born of judgment. This is not born of my analysis about someone else. This is born of my desire to be a better creator. I'm not thinking about any of those things on the front end. I'm just thinking about, how can I lift someone up and bring out the best in them? And it always blows my mind, even receiving those things from other people, just how the smallest compliment can bolster your confidence and bring these things out on you. So in terms of being a collaborator, not just a musical collaborator, but like a human collaborator, I think lifting other people up is a huge thing. And it's not just lip service. It's really, like I said, born of the desire, or when it is born of the desire to want them to do better, because you realize that when someone else does better, we all do better together. I mean, that's the collaborative nature of this whole experiment that we're doing out here. People living together and collaborating. And, and this is a microcosm for a lot of what's going on in the world today. I think people are drifting away from each other. And the more we can embrace that, no matter how different we are from people, how different we look, our different beliefs, the more we can collaborate with them, and for real collaborate, like realize that there's a synergy there that will make us all better.
Man, I love that answer. And looking at you, it's amazing to see like how far that energy of, being other person oriented and like lifting people up, like how far that can take you. So, how much of your collaborations are something that you're intuiting versus something you've kind of learned?
Well, ultimately, it's all intuition. I think learning, I'm a big preparation equals confidence guy, right? Preparation is going to give you confidence. That confidence is not going to come from the muses. That confidence is not going to be some magic thing that just dawns on you the day of the show. It's going to be from having prepared. And even when that nervousness or whatever comes upon you, you know what? You can take a breath and know that you can trust your preparation. I'm a big believer in that. And that lesson takes a lot of repetitions to get down. And so there's the preparation thing. But ultimately, all of music is about being in the moment. And preparation is just a means toward unlocking the moment. So the more you prepare, the more you can be in the moment. So, I think preparation is essential, but not so that you can get to the gig and spit out some formulaic thing that you've memorized. I think good preparation, I think really intentional preparation is all about actually freeing up the moment itself. So, you got to do some measure of preparation, but ultimately, it's really about the moment. It's all about the moment.
Can you talk to me about what you feel is most important to you when it comes to like, okay, like how do you define success for yourself? Like what actually is success for you? And not necessarily in the grand scheme of your career, but kind of day to day.
Well, I was remarking to my partner this morning about how important it is to figure out what you want. And I think that, this is like a hallmark of successful people. And so that, but that's not necessarily a great metric, but you'll hear that from, entrepreneurs or whatever. But I think they might be talking about something a little bit different. And I think clarifying these things on a daily level, on a bigger level, on a career level, tuning into what you are and what you want is so huge. And that success metric on a day-to-day level. I mean, I love to be fully engrossed in my creative projects. When I'm able to do that, that feels so exhilarating. And like I'm finishing up a solo project right now, and it's an
Yes.
EP of
I was
5.
gonna ask you about some trance banjo and we can get some
Yeah.
more of that.
So this is a bit of a different vibe. This is like 5 almost chamber sounding pieces that are solo banjo that I wrote last summer. And
Mhm.
we can talk more about that. But the reason I think of it is
Yeah.
because I've recently been recording this project in my studio, and it's been so awesome. And I'll finish these days, and I'll be like, my God, that I can't think of a better way to spend my time. I'm so grateful to have that feeling. But you know, it's not something that just comes when you're recording music. I think for me, living life and feeling all the things and doing my best, really putting my best foot forward. And, you know, every day is different, right? Like you can't, I'm not necessarily looking for every day to be the same. We do all these different things, but I do want to try to give it a consistent energy of putting my heart and soul into things and figuring out what I want to do. And, again, like there are these artistic sides to that, but for every hour that I spend in the studio, I spend multiple hours here at home with my partner, Becca, and our dog. And, we've cultivated a beautiful scene that I love to be in here. So it's a shifting set of things that I love to do, but bringing that energy to all of them. And again, just clarifying like how I want to spend my time. It's not all about this crazy career chase, I mean, I've got plenty of that, but I'm 45 now, and I've still got a few good years left, and I feel as creative and inspired as ever. But the target shifts as you get a little bit older. And um, I love to enjoy life too, and think about this experience, and just try to understand myself again the best that I can, um, to take advantage of this precious short life, because nothing is guaranteed. But it for me, it sure is a beautiful thing that I'm very grateful for when I am able to sort of live by those kind of guidelines.
For sure. And then so jump into the other side of the coin here. You know, I'm pumped about the show in Denver coming up this weekend, January 11th at the Mission Ballroom. And I know that
Yeah.
Colorado run coming up is going to be amazing. Everyone out there listening, Got that link in the description here. You can check out all the Infamous Stringdusters tour dates, grab your tickets, all that good stuff. Also, gonna have a link to Trad Plus, like I mentioned. Gotta check out the Trance Banjo album and whatever else Chris has got coming. Man, those tunes have been ingrained in my brain. But
Oh
yeah,
man, I'd love to
definitely
hear
check
that.
out those links. And absolutely, man, absolutely. And while we're on the topic of this, so when you say like chamber banjo music, what is that?
Yeah, so it's not bluegrass. It's slow, more melodic, more um, you know, compositions and tunes that don't adhere to like a strict tight rhythm. Like since it's just me playing, I can play with the rhythm and things move around. And I've never done a project like this, and it was really uh exciting but then challenging. And when I went to record the tunes for the first time, just me solo, I didn't really have a clear idea of what would make a project like that really great. So I did some, and then I listened to it, and I learned so much from that listening, and I did it again, and I listened, and the tunes evolved, the compositions evolved. Really, the main thing that evolved was the way that I performed them. And a lot of those elements that I feel again like are similar to chamber music kind of came in more and more. Just the expression of the playing, and 1 minute I'll be playing like almost silently, and the next minute I'll get really loud. And I don't have that wide palette with the string dusters, and that's okay. Like we play roles and we create that sound together. um but in this project I could go anywhere, and it just had these different dynamics and these different feels. So that's kind of what I mean, if that makes sense. I don't
Yeah.
listen to a ton of chamber music, but I have, and I've done a lot of sampling classical music for my Trad Plus stuff. And that music just brings a different energy, and this project brings a different energy. I'm really excited about it, and it's a very meaningful project to me, and also I think one of the biggest learning experiences I've had with music.
Can't wait to listen. Hell yeah. When's that coming out? You got an approximate season or anything like
you
that?
know I'm hoping that it comes out mid this year sometime. I'm kind of finishing things up right now. I'm still working on one track, so we'll see where it goes, but it's mostly done. And yeah, it'll come out sometime this year, I'm sure.
And so while we're on the topic of albums, would love to hear why cover album coming out recently from String Dusters. Loving it too, by the way.
Well, thanks, man. We've done this series of covers. We call it
Right.
Undercover, and we've done a few installments of it. And it's like there aren't enough hours in the day for us to do all the things that we want to do. We got a really unique band. We've got 5 guys who are artists, players, singers, writers, producers. And I'm so grateful, knock on wood. We're going into our 20th year as a band, and man, we've never been tighter and never enjoyed it more. I think the band sounds as good as we ever have, and we're continuing to be intentional and push the envelope in a way that's really meaningful to us. But part of what we love to do is play other people's music. I mean, there's so much great music out there, and these covers sort of accrue over time as we're doing our thing and touring. And then every couple of years we jump into the studio for a couple days and just bang them out, and it's just like one more offering to the world. You know what I'm saying? Like we do more of this. We do more albums if we could, but you can only, there's only so many hours in the day, and you can only really release so many things. So we bust one of these out every couple of years, and they're always fun. It's a part of our show, and it's a part of who we are.
I love it. I feel like a lot of bands I love, I think maybe are too precious about what they put out to put out a bunch of covers as releases. And I mean, I love them. People love them. I love that you guys like don't overthink that.
Yeah, man. And believe me, we've had that conversation, of course. And I think ultimately it just comes down to, you can't be too precious. I don't I wish we could put out more, and we all put out all this music as individuals, and it's just like, as the older I get, the more I evolve as an artist. I try not to be too precious with it. I try not to overthink it. I just try to listen and be in the moment, capture whatever's there, and then give that to the world. And you know what? Some people are going to love it. Some people might not care about it. It doesn't matter. I think doing the things that you love, for us doing the things that we love, that we care about first and foremost, well, that's going to lead to us making cool art that lasts. So this is just one more form of that.
Hmm. So also, while we're going through all the news out of the Stringdusters and Chris's world. So yeah, Chris, you brought up Inside the Musician's Brain. Chris is the host of that. We'll also have that link below for everyone to check out. So me specifically, I'd love to hear how your like kind of relationship with podcasting has changed from those early days and then, you know, to today.
Yeah, it's been such an awesome journey. And, I launched into it without necessarily any grand aspirations. I was tight with RJB, the founder of Osiris, and I'm part of his advisory board before I even started. And so I knew I wanted to have a podcast, but I didn't necessarily know how it would evolve and where it would go. But it's been such a gift. I always tell people it's like the biggest hack. I get to spend an hour and ask questions to all these incredibly smart people who I learn from. And, I'd do that even if there was no podcast. So having that combined with something that gives me a platform to share some of the things that I think about, some of the things that I've learned in my time as an artist with the Stringdusters on my own, that's really a great gift. And some of the best, most consistent feedback I hear from people these days is, I love your podcast. I've learned a lot from your podcast. There's nothing I love more than that. And as an interviewer, I've really learned that preparing is great. Obviously, the whole preparation thing we talked about earlier, figuring out what your guests are all about, listening to their music a bunch. That's a great way to open some doors. Again, just that potential energy I talked about earlier, that thing you can create by tuning into someone else and what they're doing and what they're all about. It's really a magical thing. And I've experienced that on the podcast and felt those connections deepened by having not only done my homework, but just really listening to people and being in the moment and trying to understand what they're saying before I try to relate anything that I've been through. It's much more about trying to be a great listener and understand this energy that they're bringing to the table. And it's just so cool to see the doors open when you're able to listen and pay attention on that level. So I feel like my skills as an interviewer have really evolved, um I'm covering more and more as the pod evolves. I feel like there's always obviously tons of music, and I love to get into the nitty gritty of how things are made and what were you thinking when we created this? What does this lyric mean? That's great. But I love to venturing more into the spiritual realms and understanding people's bigger relationship with life and themselves and their music. It's not just about what you were thinking when you wrote this song. It's about, what are the things that you've been through that shaped you as a human being. And so trying to unpack some of that stuff, it's so enlightening and so cool. And when I hear from listeners, I know they love that. They love to get that inside look at not just how things are done, but why things are the way that they are. So it's always a work in progress. I was just thinking today about the upcoming season because I do one season a year. I do 10 episodes a year. That's about all I have time for. And just wondering where I can take it. And I don't know the answer to this yet, but I know that it's fun to think about and a great outlet for me and something that's become a big part of my career and my expression.
Right. Yeah, I love it too. It's an awesome podcast.
Thank you.
I got to do my homework on guests sometimes, and I find myself over there from time to time.
That's awesome. Love to hear that.
Jumping off what you said though, like I definitely, would love to hear you kind of share your spirituality, like how that kind of motivates your music, finds its way through you musically, but also just kind of like how you view spirituality. Like would love to kind of, without pointing it in any concrete direction, kind of open that door.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I'm always very curious at a root level about what is going on here. What is this consciousness that I'm experiencing? What are these thoughts? What is the experience really all about? I've been so curious about that from the time that I was a little kid, and you know, it it's something that some people think a lot about. I think it's some people that experience. So other people experience it deeply. They don't necessarily articulate it the same way, but I'm someone who's thought a lot about it, uh, read a lot about it, sought a lot of advice, and I'm again always asking those questions about what am I really, and what I want this experience to be. And the answer shifts, but in terms of where I'm at now at this point in my life and seeking contentment, it's sort of what I was saying earlier in terms of what I want to get out every day. And I want to use my outlet and put my heart and soul into things and make art that I care about and believe in. But I also just want to do my best as a person. And so that's what I'm trying to sort of shape myself as in my experience, and understanding how I can get to that. And so that's how I've come to some of these realizations that resonate deeply for me, like this thing I've been talking about several times on, our talk today, this potential energy that we have as humans to lift each other up. And I know as I look inward and, for example, meditate and try and understand, well, what are the things that bring contentment to me? I'm very extrovertive and very empathetic, and I just know that I get a lot out of creating that energy in my life, lifting other people up. That's why I love to work as a producer. That's why I seek people out as mentors and teachers, because you know it's being able to be a part of that synergistic thing. That's something that I've always sought. So I'm not a religious person, but I'm a very spiritual person, and I know that this experience is about so much more than uh, this thing that I am right here and sitting in this room full of stuff. Life is about so much more than that, and we are all just these little blips of consciousness, but we are all also these beautiful, expansive, um, you know, sort of infinitely intuitive things. I mean, we are all that. So it's sort of a catch 22, because one day I'll be thinking about how I'm nothing, and then the next day, I'll be in the studio releasing all of this stuff, and where does it come from? So I'm sort of all over the map right here in this answer, but these are some of the things that I think about currently, and some of the things that I try to move toward, and ways that I try to sort of better myself. And again, I think a lot of it comes down to a pretty consistent theme for me in my spiritual journey, which is just understanding myself better. Why am I driven in these ways? Why do I feel these things? And I love thinking about that stuff. And one day it feels very serious, and one day it all feels very light. And we're going to be gone before you know it, and I'm just trying to do my best like everybody else. Um but it's interesting stuff to think about, and for me it's the stuff that I think contributes to having just the kind of curious sort of experience that I'm um oriented toward in this life.
I love it. And I love the way you put it, like potential energy, like to lift other people up doesn't actually happen unless you bring it out, you know?
It's just sitting right there in the air like magic, really. And then wow, what happens when you are able to step outside of yourself? I mean, think about if that was done on a big scale, because people tend to get pretty down on where the world is headed, and I get that. But at the same time, I think about that sometimes and I think, oh my goodness, there's incredible untapped potential that we haven't even scratched the surface of. And it's true, man. It's right there, but it's not doing anything until you activate it.
So kind of wrapping up here. I asked you earlier, like, what was the best advice that you think you followed? And I want to kind of wrap this up by asking you what you would say the best advice you would give about kind of living a life you can look back on and be proud of.
Yeah, it's again, I try not to get too stuck on judgments of the past. And I think um, for me it's a lot more about looking forward. And the older I get, the more tuned into myself I get, uh, the less I tend to look back. There's a lot of crazy stuff if you look back there, and it's amazing how you can get disproportionately hung up on this one little thing. Again, that's all in the thought world. These are all just thoughts. I mean, you can wake up tomorrow and take this experience in a whole other direction, but we don't typically think like that as humans. And I really do everything I can to be as sort of expansive and present, forward thinking. And when I was younger, I know a lot of the struggles that I've been through as a person and with music, they've come from thoughts. They've come from too much looking back, too much worrying about what's happened, anticipating what's going to come. And when I say looking forward, I'm not talking necessarily about um, anticipating what's going to come. It's just more about not looking back. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, again, this theme of just trying to be in the moment and do your best and not get hung up on what was. And I think that's a great metric. I think the more that we all can cultivate that in our lives, because we are these creatures of thought, and um, you know there there are a lot of hard things that we face in life, but putting them down, doing your best and then putting them down and not judging yourself, and giving yourself sort of a clean slate to move on. That's something that we're not, or at least I know I am not naturally good at. I've had to work at, but the more I've worked at it, I feel like the more it's opened up um, the world in front of me and allowed me to be more content. So it's sort of a long-winded answer, but I think, that looking back, I hope I was looking forward.
And being here now.
That's right. Exactly.
So any final words for your fans out there?
Man, I I appreciate you, Cam. I thank you for having me on today, man. I love getting to talk about this stuff. So, but in terms of everyone out there, go out and do your own little sociological experiment and lift someone else up and see how magical it is, and do it again and see how it comes back to you. I mean, we got to start getting that going. So what better place to start than right here now today? So there you go.
Hey man, I appreciate you, man. I love your mindset and man, if you're listening to this and you haven't yet heard Trad Plus, the trance banjo, do yourself a favor and let that spin. And yeah, Chris, man, thanks again for all that you do. Everyone out there who's listening, we got links in the description. Like I said, you can give Chris a follow, check out the String Dusters on socials. I know Picker's Paradise in New York, June
Yes.
3rd to the 6th. That's going to be awesome. So if you're listening, definitely check that out. And like I said, we'll have ticket links for upcoming String Dusters shows and Chris's podcast, all that good stuff. Until our next chat, Chris, Take care, and thanks again for the time, my man.
Thanks, Cam. Back at you, brother. Talk soon.
Cheers, brother.